Hello, how you doing and welcome back to the channel. What backs should England take to the World Cup in France later this year? That's basically what I'm talking about in this video, so make sure you have a comment down below because selection videos and in particular international selection is always something which gets people talking, it gets the debate going, so I look forward to reading your views in the comment section down below, and also like the video and subscribe to the channel as well. But let's get into it. So firstly, apologies, haven't uploaded a video onto the channel in the last week or so, combination of not finding the time and then also being away over the weekend. So I thought I would get us right back into it with a video talking about selection because all the domestic rugby in terms of the Northern Hemisphere is over now. We're kind of waiting for the ball to really start rolling and the momentum to really start get going for the World Cup in a couple of months' time. And I thought England's backline, let's start there. And actually, I know that the Telegraph here in the UK have done quite a few different articles talking about England selection and looking at various positions. They've done one which I was looking at today in terms of the halfbacks, and they've done a few for the forwards as well. So I thought overall, let's have a look at the backline. And this is kind of the backline that at this moment in time I feel like should go to France. It's subject to change because I think what we see in the World Cup warm-ups will have an impact, players will get injured, etc, etc. But England are taking a 33-man squad to France, so when it comes to the backline, what backs do we want to see? Let's start off with the scrum halves. I'll put a list of options up on screen. I don't think I've really forgotten anyone, but you can let me know if there's a name there that you think should perhaps be there as well. Obviously, you've got Jack Van Portfleet, Alex Mitchell, Ben Youngs, Danny Care, Ben Spencer, Rafi Quirk, Harry Randall, Gus Waugh and Charlie Chapman. And a mix of guys there in terms of inexperience, in terms of an awful lot of experience, different playing styles as well. For me, actually, scrum half's probably one of the easier positions for us to talk about because I thought Alex Mitchell, who has had to wait an awful long time for his opportunity, when he finally got it and finally got more of a chance in the Six Nations, even though England weren't playing that well, I thought he looked like the best option at this moment in time for England. So I would have Alex Mitchell there. I think he's the sort of player that has probably, along with Ben Spencer, you'd say those are two guys that probably have both a combination of adding speed and zip to the game and also being a controlling scrum half. And I'd say Alex Mitchell is probably the best of that in terms of a balanced scrum half that we have at this moment in time in England. So I think Mitchell definitely goes. As I've been fairly consistent with on this channel before, Ben Youngs, I think, as brilliant a career as he has had, I think his time is probably up. Danny Care, likewise, I know he came back into the team for that tour of Australia after many people were calling for him to get another opportunity, and it probably didn't quite work out in the way in which he or England would have wanted. Jack Van Portfleet, I'm not sure on because I think when he first came into the England team in Australia last year, he looked really impressive. I think he has struggled since then, though. In the autumn, before Eddie Jones got fired, and then also in the Six Nations, I think it has been a pretty tough learning curve for him. So I guess the question really, when it comes to JVP, is do you stick with him as a guy that's only 20, that you are starting to build towards the future with already, you continue to persevere? Or do you say, do you know what, right now, at this moment in time, looking at the World Cup, your form hasn't quite been there, so we're going to go in another direction? So that's kind of another question for me. One player, though, I mentioned Mitchell would definitely go for me. The other player that I would definitely pick is Rafi Quirk. I know he has been injured this year. I know he hasn't been starting at Sale. That honour's gone to Gus Waugh, who has had a brilliant, brilliant season in the Premiership. But I just think Rafi Quirk is the future, really. When you look at England's options in terms of scrum half going forward, at this moment in time, he is the most exciting, he's the most explosive. I think he potentially will have the most impact on a game out of any scrum half. So despite the fact that he hasn't played as much rugby this season, Rafi Quirk has to go. And it's kind of a toss-up for me of who you take as your third option. I think England will take a third option, by the way. We'll all remember the farce of 2019 with Eddie Jones only taking a couple of scrum halves, having to call players out. Because you've got the bigger squad, it's a 33-man squad instead of 31. You've got that extra place. I think England take 3 scrum halves. But what direction do you go in? Because again, I've got there Harry Randall, who's had a second half of the season for Bristol was really, really good. In a Bristol team that were pretty hit and miss, he was absolutely one of the outstanding players. He's someone that gives you real impetus and a lot of pace into your attack if that's what you want. Do you go for a Ben Spencer, who for years has been Mr. Reliable? His form for Bath as well, I think, has been pretty good. Is maybe that the option you go for? Do you reward Gus Waugh for a breakout season in the Premiership, or a young gun like Charlie Chapman as well? There are different options there, I think. What would I do? As I say, I'll go Alex Mitchell, I'll go Rafi Quirk. And I think I'll be tempted by Ben Spencer on form. But I would understand if you wanted to stick with Jack Van Poortvliet, because you just have to ride out this bit of bad form. I'd go with Ben Spencer at this moment in time, personally. All right, let's move on to the fly halves. This, for me, is the quickest and easiest decision. I'll put up a list of names anyway, but it's a straightforward 3, isn't it? It's Owen Farrell, it's George Ford, it's Marcus Smith. Is there anyone here who wouldn't take those 3 names? Because I would be pretty surprised, really, realistically. First of all, if they're not the 3 that get taken by Steve Borthwick, and if anyone really feels that one of those should drop out. I think you need Marcus Smith there as a different option, because he's a different attacking threat as fly half. I think he probably will be third in line heading into the World Cup in terms of how England play and how Steve Borthwick wants to set the squad up. But maybe we could see him come in if Owen Farrell does play 12. But at this moment in time, I'd have Farrell as a fly half. I'd have him and Ford, and then Marcus Smith as an option off the bench. I don't think I need to go into any of those others too much, because you look at those other options, realistically, good players, but at this moment in time, a World Cup for England, I don't think they're getting anywhere near Marcus Smith, George Ford, or Owen Farrell. Let's carry on, because I think it gets more interesting when we get into the centres. And again, a list of names there. Centres are probably similar to scrum half for me, that at this moment in time, you take Ollie Lawrence, you take Henry Slade, and you take Manu Tuolangi. I think most people would have those 3 nailed on. I know there's always injury concerns about Manu, but in the Premiership final, I thought he was absolutely brilliant, particularly in that second half for Sale. He was a massive reason of why they started getting over the gain line and got themselves into the lead in that game. Ollie Lawrence was obviously the outstanding player to break through for England in the Six Nations, and Henry Slade is a player who, first of all, has been there for a long time. He's got over 50 caps. He's quite experienced at international level, and he also just gives you a little bit of a different option in those centres. At this moment in time, actually, for what it's worth, even though it's probably foolhardy and it's probably playing fantasy rugby and not having to think of other areas where it could detract from your team, I'd be really tempted to go with Ollie Lawrence and Manu Tuolangi if I was Steve Borthwick, and just say we are going power, because when those guys are on form, they will get us over the game line. I would be tempted by that, but the obvious criticism is it's too one-dimensional. That's where Henry Slade or someone like that comes in. Where I struggle then is with my 4th option, because if I got there, Joe Marchant possibly. I know he's departing English rugby to play overseas from next season. You've got Will Joseph, Guy Porter, Dan Kelly, Lazowski, Max Ajomo, Dingwall. Any other names I've missed there? I feel like there could be. I feel like centres is one of those positions that is probably just an absolute stack load of players, and you can go in all sorts of different directions. I like all those players there, really. The one for me that I would be tempted to maybe roll the dice on, and as I say, reiterate, that's at this moment in time. I still think a lot of this will be subject to change. I would expect that the team, after we've seen all of England's warm-up matches, I'm sure I'll do a video then of who I think should go to the World Cup. After that, I'm sure my team then will be very different to now. I'll be tempted by Alex Lazowski, you know. I'll be tempted by him. I'll be tempted by Max Ajomo. I think it'll probably be a Marchant or a Porter or someone like that. But Lazowski, I'd love to see be given a bit more of a chance in that England setup. I know he was under Eddie Jones, and then he was one of the players culled after that. It was the Japan game, wasn't it? Where like Mercer, Lazowski, a few others weren't to be seen again. I'd maybe like to see him come back in there, but we shall wait and see. But if I'm pushed for an answer now, I'm going Tuolangi, Lawrence, Slade, Lazowski. On to the back 3, final position. Again, stack load of names there. I'm sure I've forgotten a few. So if you want to chuck another name for consideration in, then do let me know. What I've gone for, well, I think Freddie Stewart, Anthony Watson and Max Malins are close to nailed on. Maybe not quite as nailed on as actually some of the other positions in terms of the centres and the fly halves. But certainly Freddie Stewart, Anthony Watson, I think go. I think Max Malins, with his form at the end of the season, you take him. He played in the Six Nations and I thought played pretty well. And then where do you go after that? Because there are so many players, as I've listed there, that we could speak about. We could speak about Adam Radwan, who, in terms of pace, in terms of pure box office, get him in space and he will damage any team in the world. There's no one else really like him in England, apart from maybe Arundel. But with Radwan, I still have concerns about his overall game. And I know there will be people in the comment section saying, you don't pick a player because of what he doesn't have in his game, pick him for what he can do. I totally get that, but I also think it gets to a point where you can't ignore certain factors, and I'm just still not convinced that Adam Radwan is quite ready, but I am fully preparing myself for the people that are telling me I'm wrong in the comments. That's okay, that's just my view at this moment in time. I do accept, though, that England do need more pace in that back three to be almost a hypocrite from what I've just said. That's why I take Henry Arundel. And actually, I don't think Arundel has quite lit up the Premiership in the way that many of us were hoping over this last year. If you look back to Australia and the tour in our summer a year ago, where he scored with like his first touch, was so exciting. He's had moments in the Premiership and he's had injuries as well, which have kept him out of action. I don't think we've quite seen him be electric as often as we would like, but I probably would take him because he does have that little bit of X factor, and I think he just has that bit more of an all-round game as well, in terms of that he can play fullback. I'd trust him a little bit more under the high ball than I would Radwan, so I'll go with him. And I mean, after that, Alex Goode, always overlooked by England. Elliot Daly's form was excellent until he got injured. Tommy Freeman's been in and around the setup. Obviously, the experience of Johnny May. I like Tommy Freeman as well. Did I put him down now? I did. Yeah, he is in there just below Radwan. So there's so many players that I would go with, but ultimately I want to see Caden Murley play for England. I've been saying this for a while. He's been a brilliant winger in the Premiership. He's been one of the form wings over the last couple of years in the Premiership. I'd like to see Caden Murley. So that's why I would go with him and Henry Arundel, along with Max Malins, Anthony Watson, Freddie Stewart. In Watson and, well, even Watson, Malins, Arundel could all potentially play fullback as well if you wanted to shift them around. If you wanted to get Freddie Stewart on a wing to deal with some of the high bombs, you can. I think it gives you options in that back three. Does it have enough pace in there? Do I need to put Radwan in? Who knows? You can let me know in the comments down below. That's my general thought at this moment in time. The England backline heading into the World Cup at this moment, those are the names that I would select. I look forward to reading all your comments. Like the video and subscribe to the channel as well. At some point, I will, well, probably tomorrow, to be honest, or sometime later this week, I will have a look at England's forward pack as well and what selections I would do there. Look forward to hearing from you, and I'll see you in the next one.